There's a dark side of the diversity and inclusion culture, and there are probably more. But today I want to talk about that part, which is that even in diversity and inclusion conversations, we are not allowed to be feminine or to seem feminine or to talk about the feminine. So the phenomenon is that we are so afraid of chasing the men away. We so want to please the masculine leadership culture that we are tiptoeing around and trying to say things that don't offend them, that don't make them feel like we're too much or too little. And we're trying to be as masculine as possible in our approach. And, arguing with data, with science, and in always trying to adopt the masculine culture to talk about the need, the urgent emergency need for more females in power, or more other people than just the traditional white male. People who represent a lot of other different experiences, a lot of different cultures, a lot of different perspectives, viewpoints, spiritual beliefs, and so on. A lot of different gender experiences. So we are trying to please the masculine culture by not being too different than them. And I think that's a problem because it means that it will take so much longer. It will take so much longer if we don't acknowledge, hello, what's needed is what's missing. What's needed is what we are not yet talking openly about. We need more feminine energy in business and society. We don't need only feminine energy. We don't need just any kind of feminine energy. We need more mature, divine feminine energy everywhere in society. And this mature feminine energy needs to go along with mature masculine energy in everywhere in society. This is what's needed. But we only talk about that in spiritual environments, in alternative communities. We don't dare bringing that to the table in diversity and inclusion conversations. And I think that's a problem that will delay us, because it's like we're talking about everything else. We're trying to like mend the problems from all kinds of different angles, but this is the root cause of our problems. This is the root cause of this imbalance that we have. We simply lack a balance between the yin and the yang. And we lack a balance between conscious yin, and that fruitful dance these two energies are able to create together. So we are afraid to seem too feminine, and the too feminine is not included in the diversity inclusion discussions. It's not invited on stage. It's not invited to contribute because it's too whatever. It's just too something, too much, too little, too different, too spiritual. Oh my God, is spirituality is not allowed into at the table either. But spirituality, hello, what is spirituality? Spiritual intelligence is a connection in the brain. It's actually the new brain, the frontal lobes, that makes us able to see the bigger picture and create meaning out of things. Do we need that intelligence at the diversity inclusion table? Do we need to include that perspective? Yes or yes? I mean, if we don't include that perspective, how far are we going to get? We need to include this ability to see the bigger picture, to see the whole and not just the small parts. If we keep repairing the small parts, which I believe is a very masculine ability, the ability to dissect everything into small parts and look at it and really, really go into the details. And bravo for that, has brought us so much technological advancement. It's a great skill, but it can't go alone. We also need to look at the bigger picture and see how all these small parts go together. So I would say spiritual intelligence belong at the diversity and inclusion table. It should be allowed, it should be talked about, it should be open out in the air, the spiritual perspective. And we should also allow the purely feminine perspective in. The feminine perspective is all about what's life affirming, life giving. It's what's represented in the whole regenerative megatrend, which has to be a megatrend because it's not about only about repairing a little bit there and sustaining a little bit there. It's about regenerating everything we have destroyed in the name of growth. So we need those perspectives to be very present at the table instead of just talking about how can we in a nice way where we don't offend anybody, where we don't risk offending anybody, or the male ego in the room, where we, or the female ego in the room. How can we include these perspectives and talk about what's real instead of trying to be nice and caring so nobody gets offended? Hello. The feminine community has been offended for thousands of years. I mean, so if you get a little bit offended because we talk about the feminine and we talk about spirituality, it's not so unhealthy that you get a taste of what it feels like to get offended. It's not so bad because it actually, I think, would foster a little bit of compassion with the people who have feel offended for years and years and years, and with very good reason. And here I'm not only talking about the women, but my God, it's all the minorities, all the indigenous cultures. Don't get me started. So many communities have had more than good reasons to feel offended. So let's not be so afraid of offending. It's not a bad idea to get a little bit of a taste of how it feels, and let's talk about what's real. Let's talk about what's real and what's needed now. And what's needed is that we include the feminine energy at the table, and we talk about what's real, and we include the higher perspective, and we dare to admit that the feminine principle is the life affirming and life giving and life caring principle. And that if that principle shouldn't sit at the diversity inclusion table, I don't know who should sit there. So include it. You're hereby an invitation to include it. And the first place to include it is in yourself. So I invite you to book a little chat with me, and we can talk about how this is something that you can use in your life, and how you can start inviting the diversity and inclusion principles at the table, all the voices at the table in your life and in your leadership, because that's where it all starts. It all starts from the inside out, and then it ripples into society. And I think it's really time to let that one ripple right now for the benefit of all.